Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat and kind of say who you are and where you're from, that'd be awesome. We're going to get started in 1 or 2 more minutes as people are joining. So go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat and kind of who you are and where you're from. I'm going to give people a couple more minutes to join, just in case they're still logging into Zoom as we're getting started. Yeah, I guess good morning is not quite right because people are joining from all over the world. So good morning or afternoon or evening, depending where you're from. So people from all over the United States and Washington and Missouri and New York. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to give everyone about 1 more minute to join so then we can get started, because I want to respect your guys' time for showing up on time, but also give people a few minutes of just getting started and working through technology and all of that. Cool. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I see that we have people joining from all over the world and all sorts of different time zones. So this is super exciting. So this session, I'm going to share my screen, is about integrating. Sorry. Oops. Okay. Yeah, this session is about integrating math and language arts. And so we're going to go through a presentation. This is actually my first time doing this presentation specifically. And so feedback is always welcome with this. So I want to start by sharing the Google slide I am using. I'm posting the link in chat. So if you ever want to reference this outside of this presentation, you can do that. But we're going to get started. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Seth Howard, and I am a middle school and high school math teacher. I have a master's in curriculum instruction with a focus on mathematics. And I have been teaching for 3 years at a bilingual Thai English school in Bangkok, Thailand. I saw someone in the chat ask what time it was in Bangkok. It is 11 p.m., so it's a little bit late in this side of the world, but I'm super excited for this time to just talk and kind of share about integrating math and language arts. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is Seth Howard 42. And if you want to tweet about this conference, we have the hashtag virtual math 21. So you can share your thoughts as we go through this conference. This and other sessions will be using that hashtag. So feel free to use that. Some questions that we will begin answering in this session or during our time today is, what role do reading and language arts have in the math classroom? What are some benefits of integrating math and language arts in the subjects together? And what are some ways that these two subjects can be woven together in kind of some real life applications and examples of how this has been done? I will also be showing some student work at different points of things I have done with my students, and I have gotten their permission to share all of those. So just a disclaimer on that. So kind of to jump into this, I want to preface where this whole idea got started for me. Um, my family has always been diehard education people. My dad teaches math at a university in the state of Oklahoma. My mom works in the admissions department for the same university. My brother's about to start his first year of teaching math. And so like just education's always been a huge part of my family. Um, and so with that, my dad always had a very liberal arts humanities approach to mathematics. He always enjoyed reading and writing and philosophy and that whole aspect. And so that definitely rubbed off on me in my like upbringing. And then my wife, who is also an elementary teacher, has a master's in curriculum instruction with a focus on reading and is working on becoming a reading specialist. And so that has guided a lot of our conversations. And so it's just kind of sparked an interest in a passion for integrating language arts and mathematics together. And all of that paired with working with bilingual students for the past 3 years has definitely like pushed me to do this more often. Working with students whose native language is not English may make it seem daunting to incorporate language arts in reading and English and writing, but it also shows the power of it and how it can be so beneficial. Some literature and works like reading that has gotten me inspired on this is Math with Bad Drawing by Ben Orlin, because he kind of presents, if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. He presents mathematics in a very friendly, engaging way that's meant for non-math people, and it's written for a very general audience. And then also the book Crest of the Peacock by George Joseph. It's just a very well-written historical approach to mathematics, but it looks at non-Western history of mathematics. So it's a lot of the history of math from China and the ancient Near East and Egypt and India. And so when you look at those, you start seeing math as a story of humanity. And so reading's a huge and writing is a huge part of that as well. I also came across this quote a few months ago and really liked it in terms of why reading's so important. Dr. Seuss had this quote: "The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go." And this is true for reading. And as educators and teachers, we know this, but oftentimes this is left out of non-English, non-language classes. A lot of times we think of reading as important, but only in English class or only in language class. We don't focus on it in other classes like math or science or other places. And so it's so powerful that it should be a part of these content areas as well. The language arts. So language arts, I'm kind of defining very broadly as reading, writing, poetry, all of those. They allow students to engage in the beauty of mathematics in ways that are often overlooked. They're often inaccessible in the traditional way of teaching. And sometimes that's not to a fault of ourselves. Sometimes it's out of our control as teachers because maybe we have some standards we have to hit for a certain test, or maybe there's certain content we're expected to hit for a district or a state or government level. And so sometimes just the time we're allowed doesn't allow for the deep, enriching, engaging pieces of mathematics that we might know and enjoy as math teachers. But reading and writing allows students to engage in those in different ways that might open up doors for future learning. And so the language arts are essential for all of that. And so I am a huge proponent of reading in the classroom at all levels, especially in elementary. It's more common in the elementary grades to read to your students. But even in older grades, in middle school and high school, I'd still recommend reading books with your students or even to your students. It may sound weird, but try reading a math picture book to your middle school classroom. They will love it. I guarantee it. They'll think it's different. They'll think it's fun. They will enjoy it. It may seem awkward at first, but definitely worth it. Some books I recommend. There's a book called Wilma Unlimited that can be meant for all students. It's a picture book geared towards elementary, but I've used it a lot in middle school and high school as well. And so it's appropriate for all grade levels. Math with Bad Drawings is also a great one to have students read different pieces of, or even use his blog to read different aspects of his engaging in math. And then Flatland is a great option for high school. I also have compiled a list of other books, like there's 30 or 40 books on the list. I didn't have time to list them all in this one slide, but feel free to check that link. I will also post a link to the books in the chat. So there's also, there's also a full list of books there. I can't find the link on my end right now, but it should be linked in the doodle slide. The Math Devil I saw in the chat is also a great option. I've only read that once or twice, never with students. It was just recommended to me, but I've read it. It was awesome. I would highly recommend it for students. Thank you, Andy, for posting that. I don't know why I can't find it. Communication is also foundational within mathematics. Communication within writing is also important. When you introduce writing into a math class, it allows students to communicate in ways that are way more comfortable. If you introduce writing in a math classroom, so let's say you go to your students and say, hey, we're going to do some writing today. They will probably freak out because a lot of students, whether they realize it or not, well, a lot of students don't like math to begin with. A lot of students think that they're not math people. And so they already go into math class not ready for it. And then if the math teacher says, oh, we're going to write an essay today, they might just shut down. And so the way it's communicated has to be done very carefully. Expectations need to be very clear, but also it needs to be very open-ended and kind of friendly and all about the communication. Because writing is stressful for students, writing is stressful for adults. And so with writing, it is a powerful tool for communication, but there also needs to be that word of caution of, at first, there's going to be a lot of pushback. At first, there's going to be a lot of tension and eye rolls and groans and all of that, but students can get through it. It might take a day or two, but they will get through it. With collaboration, this is one area that I've loved learning the past year and a half or so of online learning and digital learning. Many of the word processing platforms, so Microsoft Word, Google Docs, all of those, allow for students to, especially within education settings, allow for students to work on the same document at the same time. And so I've done a lot of collaborative essays where students write maybe a 1 or 2 page essay, but as a group. And so I have each student say, okay, this student is this taller, this student is this taller. And that way each student is writing in a separate color. So when I go look through it, I can see what each student worked on, but it also lets them share ideas and collaborate and work together in that. Another powerful tool within technology is it gives instant feedback within writing. Feedback is awesome because it lets you answer questions. It allows students to ask questions in a very low stakes environment. Generally at the end of my reflection assignments, I will always say, ask a question, or what questions do you have? Or do you have any questions, something like that. And oftentimes students are much more willing to ask questions in writing than out loud or in Zoom or in class. They feel much more safe asking questions, whether it's because they're afraid of being embarrassed or they're afraid of asking too many questions, but giving them the chance to write online or write it down is powerful, and it leads to students learning how to ask really good questions. And so there's a lot of digital tools that let you do that well, but it also can be done on paper in classrooms. Say, write some questions and pass them in or something like that. So yeah, I want to kind of go through 4 different ways I've incorporated writing within my classroom and kind of talk about some examples of how that's worked, some pitfalls I've noticed, and some kind of just general themes that work well and maybe don't work so well. I use writing to help reflect and apply different mathematics sub and content areas within the subjects. A lot of reflection, a lot of application. I have students do a lot of writing to explain what they know. This can be formal or informal. I have students write to engage within topics that may go beyond the standards, but it hits something that they really enjoy or are really passionate about. And I use writing to bring creativity, collaboration, and project management into the classroom. So I kind of walk through these. In each of these, I included some student work so you can kind of see what I have been working with and working towards. Within the reflections and applications for mathematics, these are often a lot shorter. This can be done at any grade level. Generally, I would say upper elementary and upwards. Students should be able to write 4 or 5 sentences minimum for this. And so this is great for the 4th, 5th grade and up, where they can start writing thoughts and putting sentences together to form ideas. I try to keep these ones short. These are 1 paragraph to maybe a page. I always have students ask questions at the end. They always are told, write down 1 or 2 questions. This just gets them in the habit of thinking critically, of asking questions, again, in a low stakes, low stress environment. Topics that I've done this with are math history, where they maybe choose a mathematician and write about that person, whether it's a current mathematician or a mathematician from history. I have them write about their personal view of mathematics, which is the example here, where I had students draw a picture of what it means to learn math and then explain their picture. I have students write about their careers and what careers they want to do and where math is within that. And then I also have students just do reflections at the end of projects and assessment, where I have students maybe answer a few guided questions, or maybe just write a paragraph reflecting on the most recent unit of learning, of what went well, what didn't work well, what would you like to do differently, where could this be used in real life. And so kind of just very general, very quick paragraph, 1-page essays. These can be very powerful for just insight to where students are at, because tests and assessments don't always tell the full story. A test may not tell you every single little detail of what a student knows, but if you let students start writing, they start explaining things at a deeper level, and you start to see exactly what they know and where they're at. And then you can kind of meet them where they are and kind of build from there what your class needs. I have students use mathematics or writing to explain what they know in formal writing. This is more ideal for middle and high school because it's a little more intensive in the writing. It could be done in elementary, but it have to be very structured. I try to keep these ones at 3 to 4 pages if it's done individually, but I've done upwards of 6 to 8 pages in groups. I usually do this in place of unit exams. So maybe once or twice a semester, instead of a unit exam, I will have them write an essay. And it usually requires explanation in great detail. One example of this, which I've shown a picture of, is a trigonometry unit essay, where they have to write in groups, they were asked to write an essay describing different transformations of trigonometry graphs and how changing different parts of a trigonometry equation changed the graphs and how they were all related to each other. And so students were able to include equations and graphs and pictures. They used Desmos to create graphs and include those images in their paper, and just kind of, they wrote their understanding, and rather than just repetition of questions. And so this is a really cool way to just have students focus and learn on explaining things using words rather than just math notation. I also have students engage, I engage students with different topics in mathematics that go beyond the standards. in that I try, especially in upper grades, grades 10, grade 11, grade 12, as students start thinking about university and college and careers, I have them start thinking of what they enjoy and then maybe have them write a 1 or 2 page paper, or maybe it's a little bit longer, um, on something they enjoy, something that they are interested in that we maybe haven't covered in great detail, in the mathematics that goes into that. I've done this especially with grade 12 with graduating seniors. I kind of model it off after the IB math exploration paper, um, where I have students choose a topic and do a research paper. And you can imagine how assigning a research paper in math class goes. Students are terrified, students are afraid, they're confused why we're doing this in math class, they don't see the point of it. But after the first day or so of working on it, they were fully engaged. They loved doing it. And it's because they got to choose their topics. They got to choose topics they were fully invested in, and they dove into it. I've had students write about the algorithm of solving a Rubik's Cube. Or I had a student that was taking physics at the time and wanted to do aerodynamics of race cars. I've had students do architecture and stuff like that. And so giving the students the freedom to choose different areas that matter to them and find the math within it is really cool and a really powerful way for them to extend what they know while also incorporating writing in a class that they're not used to writing. And then I also use it to bring creativity and collaboration, and project management into the classroom. This one is something that I have done and I've liked it, but it also needed some fine tuning, just because there's a lot of challenges with this one. This past year, I had students in my grade 10 class write a children's style book about vectors. And that was a little bit challenging because it wasn't necessarily an easy mathematical topic to write about. But my students took it and ran with it. They did full illustrations. This example on the slides is actually student drawn by a group of students. They wrote it, they illustrated it and everything. I was not super happy with the timing of the project. And this was something that I struggle with, is that my students are very artistic. They love attention to detail, which I think is awesome. The final product looks amazing, but they will take as much time as I give them on it. If I give them 5 days, they will spend every minute of those 5 days working diligently, but they will also put in so much detail they'll need a little bit extra time. And when I see the quality of their work, I want to honor them and give them the quality of work because I know they're turning in good work, but it means it takes a lot of time. And so when dealing with writing and incorporating projects, it can be a challenge of timing, of how much in-class time do you give to this? How much do you expect them to do at home? How much is reasonable to expect on top of other classes they're in? And so I love having students write a story because it makes them think critically. It makes them engage in a subject in a way they're not familiar with. They had to think about, okay, how can I take this subject of vectors in this case, and how can I change it to something that a elementary student could understand? How can I try to explain it in a kid-friendly way? And they did really well with it. But again, they also spent so much time on the illustration, the fine detail, that timing took longer than I anticipated. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just something to be aware of, that sometimes when you introduce writing, students may get over invested and spend so much time on it that you want to give them more time to complete their work and do the best they can. When I had students make the book, I had students use something called bookcreator.com, which is just a digital platform for creating books where they can work on it together. I highly recommend this project. It was a lot of fun, but it took longer than expected, which isn't bad. It's just hard when we are limited by time and standards and all of that as educators. So yeah. Another area that I have not introduced in the past, but I came across on Twitter a few weeks ago, and I really want to introduce, I'll probably do it one of the first weeks of school this coming school year, is poetry. Um, Poetry is an area that I struggle with because I never knew how to incorporate it in math class. I would love to. And I recently came across a tweet by Steven Sturgatz that gives an example of math poetry. It's titled Math Persons or Math Person, and it's by Julia Shannon. And it was a high school student that entered a competition and wrote about math people and what different stereotypes are about math people, and just kind of wrote beautiful poetry about math and math students and kind of the stereotypes behind it. And so poetry is one of those I have not in the past incorporated, but I came across this and I really do plan on doing this in my classes. And so I thought I'd share it here as well for those of you that are interested in incorporating poetry into your classes. This would be a great place to start as well. I've posted a link to the poems. I believe there's 5 of them in total. One of them is listed here. It's titled Or Something. And here's what it says. Here's what some people say. I'm not a math person. Insert shrug, sheepish smile. I can barely figure out the tip. Wait, you take extra math classes? Really? Why? What do you mean? Just for fun? Wow, you must be a genius or something. Here's what no one says. I'm just a words person. Insert shrug and sheepish smile. I can barely read a sentence. Wait, you read an entire book this weekend? The whole thing? Every page? Really? Why? What do you mean, just for fun? Wow, you must be a genius or something. I'm getting tired of being mistaken for a genius when I'm just a plain old nerd. Struggling, stumbling, pushing, experimenting. Trying to get more of something that makes me feel fascinated and uncomfortable, hopeless, stupid, excited, real. And so this is a really cool poem that shows kind of it breaks down the barrier of when people say, oh, I'm not good at math. I'm sure you guys have experienced this as teachers and educators. If you say like, oh, I teach math, people's automatic response is, oh, I was never good at math. They always internalize it to them immediately. They never actually think about what the subject is. They see, here's my relationship to that subject. But if you do that to English or to science, when you say, oh, if I teach science, a person's first response is never, oh, I was really bad, or I hate science, or I was never good at science. It's often, oh, cool, that's a really interesting subject, or something along those lines. Where mathematics has gotten a bad rap in the past, and people struggle with it, and they often internalize it. But this poem does really good job at breaking down that and saying it's silly to say math, like what's so special about math? You can be good at math, you can be good at reading, but to internalize and say, why do you like math is the same as saying, why do you like reading? And it's so well written. And so, yeah, just introducing poetry as something that kind of, one, shows how poetry can be done in math class, but also two, helps students break down that stereotype. It leads to a classroom where students don't see the stereotype of not being a math person. We can start encouraging students to see math for what it is. So I just wanted to share that with you guys in this as well. It can be a challenge and hard and awkward to incorporate writing or work on writing in math, but it's such a powerful tool. There's gonna be a lot of pushback by students, possibly even by parents that don't understand what you're doing. A lot of times parents, even like administration, sometimes have a very narrow view of what teaching math is. And so if you do anything that ventures from what they believe a math class should be, they may question it. Students are scared of writing, especially second language students, but even first language students struggle with writing. And they are just terrified of like they feel overwhelmed by it sometimes. They feel like they don't know where to start. And so writing can take a lot of support. It might be a little bit of a struggle to get started. You probably can't start with a 10-page essay day one of school. You might need to start with like a 1-paragraph, 5 or 6 sentences, easy introduction to writing. And so when reading and writing with students, this is kind of where students benefit. What students get from this is they learn how to think critically. They learn how to analyze. When they're reading, when they're writing, they're pulling math into different contexts. They're pulling math into different areas of different contexts, in different areas of content. Um, they're learning to analyze, they're learning to read, they're learning to incorporate emotion and argument. Um, they're learning how to analyze and respond to situations. If you do poetry, they're learning how to analyze poetry. That's a skill in math, is learning how to read or read a problem and understand it. Students are learning how to communicate clearly across different contexts. Not all mathematics is just solving equations or using a calculator. A lot of times mathematics requires explaining or teaching or writing. And so students are getting practice explaining things in a written verbal form. Students are learning how to form good arguments. Especially if we get to the longer essays of 3 to 4 to 5 pages, students start adding structure. They start giving proof and evidences. And so that begins to be the background of proofs, of giving reasoning behind everything. And students learn how to learn beyond the textbook. Incorporating reading encourages students that math can be learned beyond just the math book. They can read literature, they can read journals and blog posts and different resources. They can learn how to engage in math beyond just the textbook homework problems. And so reading and writing with students engages students in all sorts of different thinking and learning that is going to equip them to be better learners and better people. And so if you're just curious of where to start or need help on where to begin this journey, or maybe you've started some of this and need to know where to go next, how to integrate reading and writing in your classroom, the first thing as a teacher you can do is start reading or continue reading. We as teachers should be reading, because the more we read, the more we're able to incorporate storytelling and history and language into our classroom. And so if we start reading, we start coming across things that we can share with our students and ideas, and they start seeing us do it, and they start doing it as well. We can give students the opportunity to read. This is a little easier at the elementary level because most elementary classes have some sort of student library or class library, but it can be done in the middle school and high school just as well, of giving students the ability or opportunity to read. Maybe it's you provide them resources or articles or books to read. I have a couple of copies of Math with Bad Drawings. And so I don't have enough for every student to have one, but I might just have students get into groups of 4 or 5 and go read a chapter as a group and then discuss it, and then we come back to class. So that's giving students the opportunity. Another thing I found, especially with older students, but even in middle school and upper elementary, I've seen it, just getting students started. If you just give them the push, just give them the start, they can go with it and run with it. They might need structure, they might need scaffolding, they might need a few things to get started, but if you get them going, they can run with it. They may ask questions, and so you need to help with those questions, but just getting them started is one of the biggest obstacles within this. Ask for help and share resources is huge. That's part of the reason why I love doing a session like this type of conference, is teachers aren't islands. We work together, teachers share resources, teachers collaborate, we share ideas, we share what's worked, what hasn't. And so continue that. If you find something that works, share it with others. Whether it's through a blog post or through Twitter or through social media, share resources when possible. And then also talk to the English and language departments at your school. See when they incorporate poetry. See if they incorporate writing, and kind of work with them and see how to enable your students to write within the math classroom. Again, you're not in this alone. You're not the only teacher this student has. Maybe you can work with the English teacher, and maybe their next essay, all of the students write math essay in English class. Or maybe you have them read a math poem in English or something like that. Work with the English department at your school, or if you're elementary, integrate the subjects across class times. Nothing says you have to keep math time to just math and English to just English. You can share times and resources with those as well. So yeah, I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. What questions do you guys have at this point? Feel free to ask questions in the chat. I've noticed you guys have been talking about things you've done, which are awesome. So just keep sharing ideas. Are there questions or other things that you've done that have worked well, or things you found that don't work well? So yeah, are there any questions at this point or comments or? Oh, sorry, let me be able to change that setting. So Andy was asking, do you have a collaborative prompt that we could try together? I'd enjoy writing together with other participants. One prompt that is my go-to with teachers is, how do you learn math? Similar to, let me go back a couple slides. This is one that I love going back to with teachers is start with a drawing, draw what it means to learn math. So we could start with drawing a picture of how do students learn math, and then write a couple sentences describing your picture. That's a really fun prompt. So if you want to take a few minutes right now and do that, and then we can share them, or you can share them in the chat, we can do that as well. So yeah, that would be my prompt, is draw a picture of how do you learn math, and then write a couple sentences about that as well. Okay. You should be able to unmute now, by the way. Have you worked with ELL students using primary language to do writing? If so, how did it? I've only worked with, so the students I work with are all Thai. They speak Thai as their first language, but we do all of our reading, writing, and math. So I've never worked with their Thai writing. I've only worked with their second language within writing and reading, which is definitely its own challenge. It does require a lot more structure in terms of prompts and questions. Sometimes it means I need to simplify questions. I'm generally a little more lenient with grammar, but again, my goal is to get them writing about math, not necessarily nitpick the grammar. I do help with grammar at times, but my focus is more on the communication piece as well. So I've not worked with their primary language. I've only worked with their second language of generally being English. Does that answer your question, Joseph? Awesome. See if students write mathographies where they write personal relationship with math. That's a really great idea of, yeah, just how do they view math? I love having students write how they view math at the start of the year and then at the end of the year, and have them compare it. Because my hope is that it gets better. But that's a really cool, yeah, doing something that's really cool. It's a great option. Oh yeah, that's an awesome benefit of that, is being able to share your own view with them. Because yeah, reading, writing allows us to engage in really neat conversations with our students, where we can talk about the good, the bad, the hard, all of that. When writing math, key indicators I look for is general understanding of, so if it's related to content, like writing a unit essay, I look for very specific content related structure. I don't worry so much about spelling, um, especially at upper grades, because in high school spelling can get really weird of math topics. Um, but I also encourage students to use the spell check. I have students use Grammarly as well to help with spelling. So spelling is generally not too much of a concern because it's mostly done digitally and there's enough tools to help support that. Um, but I generally look for mastery and understanding of a topic where it's not just one sentence restated 5 different ways. I look for like a statement and then some reasoning behind why it works or some explanation to why. Um, on the bigger essays, especially when I partner with English teachers, I do care more about structure and grammar, but that's not very often for my class. My class is more just getting them used to writing and using written arguments. But yeah, I try to keep everything like very low pressure because I do know that a lot of students are not confident in writing. I am one of those people. I am not confident in my own writing. Um, my wife can attest to you that I am not confident in writing. I have her proofread a lot of things for me. I have her check spelling for things. Like I am not confident in my formal academic writing. But doesn't mean I don't do it. I just have to get it double checked. And so a lot of times I might have a lot of like group papers, which is why I do a lot of the group ones, is because it lets them share ideas. Um, it lets students collaborate and work together and help them learn from fixing their own mistakes and also fixing the mistakes that their friends don't or friends may make. Start day one reading math courses. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, any way to incorporate reading, writing day one's a lot of fun. It lowers the pressure for students. Students, you guys know, often enter math class with math anxiety. And so entering with reading or some fun thing like that kind of takes the stress off of them from day one, which is really cool. It kind of helps them breathe and they realize math isn't all just computations. And so, yeah, getting something like that day one is really cool. Okay. Has anyone gotten a picture of how they learn math or written a couple sentences of how they learn math done that they want to share? So practice and watch examples, conversation. That last this piece, the conversation piece, is huge. So much of learning comes through conversation and networking. Um, I don't think like we realize how much we learn, or students don't realize how much they learn from just conversation. Um, Very little is retained from direct instruction. You can learn from direct instruction. There's not bad. It's not bad to hear someone lecture, but so much more is learned when they can talk to their classmates, when they can talk to the teacher, when they write about it, when they process it. That collaboration and conversations are huge. As teachers, yeah, conferences are awesome. Twitter is a great place for networking in math. Math Twitter is one of my favorite places, just as it's so crazy the different things on there. Everyone's doing something so different, yet everyone's going towards this common goal of like educating people math, which is so neat. So yeah, Twitter is an awesome place like that. Community is definitely so valuable in learning. Any other questions at this point? Okay, so last kind of wrap up slide. Thank you guys for coming to this today. I hope you guys learned a lot from this and just kind of were inspired by this and kind of encouraged by this. It seems like a lot of you guys have already been doing something similar to this. So for those of you that have already been doing it, keep up the great work, keep going with it. For those of you that have not done it, I challenge you to try it this coming school year. Um, and so I would love feedback on this conference. Or on this session, I guess. I've attached a Doodle form. I'm also going to post the link in chat. So if you can fill out the short Doodle form at some point in the next day or so about this session, just to help me improve it and also be a better presenter in the future, I would love that as well. Okay, so one of the questions in the chat was, what's your favorite writing assignment I've ever given? That's a hard one. I think my favorite was when I gave grade 12 a very open-ended writing assignment. So something weird at our school, there's some weird government there's some weird government things. Being a bilingual school, we follow a different calendar than the government schools. And so because of that, our graduating class, their grades are due a few weeks before final exams. And so grade 12, their grades are turned in way earlier than everyone else. So they have a couple weeks of going to school with really nothing to do. And so in that time, I had them write a essay on, they got to choose a topic. It's actually the one I referenced earlier, where they got to choose a topic that they were passionate about. I tried to push them towards things they were going to do in their career. But I just said, choose the topic, write about the math in it. And that was all of the instructions I gave them. And then I kind of met with them individually to help fine tune it. But they chose some fun topics like the aerodynamics of a race car, or the algorithms used in social media, or the psychology of why social media is so addicting, and stuff like that. And so just giving students an open-ended question like that was really fun, because it got to see them just run with what often led to really interesting and deep mathematics that we didn't really just cover in class very much. So that one's fun. I always enjoy giving students assignments that make them reflect on mathematics, of just how they view mathematics, because it's really interesting to see how students view the subject. Because students may say one thing out loud. Students have, especially by high school, they learned the right answer. When a teacher asks them, what do you like about math? They've learned the good, easy, cliche answers. But getting them to write 5 sentences or a page brings out the true answers, which is really cool. So it's a tie between those two, just giving the students the freedom to choose any topic and write about the math within it, or just having students write about how they view math. But yeah, that's kind of all I have for you guys in this session. We have about 2 or 3 more minutes. If there's any other questions, I can answer those. But again, thank you guys for coming. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was a fun group. Thank you guys for being engaged and participating. There's a lot of great stuff in this chat. Such a great group of educators. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the sessions. I will probably see you guys in other sessions as well, because I'll be joining some later. So have a great rest of your guys' day, wherever you are located. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for coming. Have a great rest of your guys today. Enjoy the rest of the conference and other sessions you guys go to.